Hello, and welcome to the Brave New Weed podcast. And now, here's your host, Joe Dolce.
This is episode 76 of the Brave New Weed podcast. We're interrupting our regularly scheduled programming because of the irregular world we currently live in. I'm your host, Joe Dolce. I'm with Matthew Hendershot. Matthew, hi.
Greetings from Germany, Joe. How you doing? How's lockdown? How's quarantine?
Greetings from Tucson, Arizona, where I am now an official Corona or COVID refugee.
Is that for real? I know you were in Mexico City. What? You're not really a refugee. Come on.
I'm not. I'm a self-imposed refugee. All right. Should we just get right into this right now? Before we do that, let me just tell our listeners. So what I wanted to do is I had a little struggle. Only reporting on cannabis news and sort of the way we've been doing things. I needed to feel relevant. I needed to feel like we're in this moment here. So the other day I woke up and I emailed some folks around the world in the cannabis industry saying, hey, will you tell me what your life is like? Will you tell me what your personal and business life is like? And I got a couple of responses. I mean, one of the people I asked was Dr. June Chin, who's obviously a very close person to me and a business partner. And she said, Joe, I'm in Westchester, New York, which is the epicenter of coronavirus right now. We're recording this on March 27th. And I'm doing emergency triage in the ER, and it's overwhelming, and I just can't talk to you. And I said, fine, that's much more important than talking to me. But I got some other folks on the line. I got a friend from Israel and another colleague in Denver. And that's what you're going to hear today, folks. You're going to hear about what their experience as cannabis people in the industry and just as people is like in these different places. And I'm hoping to do more of this as time goes on until it feels like it's no longer important. Right now it feels human to me. It feels like contact is the way to go. So, Matt, before I tell everybody my little saga of getting out of Mexico and into Tucson, how's life in Germany?
Well, you know, we're also under lockdown. They have issued a lot of rules for us. They don't want anyone gathering in groups larger than 2. They don't want anyone traveling unnecessarily. They don't want anyone leaving their house unless you're going to the grocery, going to the apotheca for some medicine, or there's a weird caveat about exercising outside. So apparently you can still take a walk around the block and that's okay. You know, Germany in general, they're a little bit of a moderate self-isolating country anyway.
Yes.
And then you have,
it's true.
They're also big on following rules. So when it came out that everyone should self-isolate a little bit more and avoid going out and everything like that, I think Germany really responded very strongly. Now, I will say that I went out today, and this is officially day 5, I think, of official lockdown, and there were a lot of people out. So I don't know if their patience was only a couple days long or what, but it definitely seemed that I encountered a lot of people who were out and about today. It was enough to make me think about it and recognize that, okay, so maybe this lockdown thing, people aren't taking it as seriously as they should. But
well, we will see. Time will tell. I am so amazed at the amount of times I touch my face.
Oh, yeah.
I can't tell you. I mean, I know I read some report, it's something like 85 times an hour. I am absolutely guilty of that. I'm actually thinking now of putting tape on my fingertips. So I'm aware of touching my face as I do. I mean, the other day I was having all sorts of tingle sensations and itches on my face. The more I became aware of it, the more sensations on my face I started noticing, and it was driving me absolutely mad.
You got like fixated on it somehow.
It's important to notice, but it's a little crazy making at the same time. And that's what I think about social distancing in general. It's very important to notice, and it also it can be very challenging. This is not just stay on your own, kids. It can be very different. Let me tell you why I'm in Tucson. So I was, as you know, I've been in Mexico City for about 6 weeks. I essentially went there to escape winter. And really, up until about, I would say, 2 weeks ago, I was moseying along on my very merry way. It was clear to me that Mexico felt untouched by corona, right? And then it became clear to me that Mexico only feels untouched because the government is so lax. And this occurred to me a few weeks ago when I saw the president on television outside urging people to hug and kiss. This is the president of the country, okay? More idiotic than Trump, which is hard to believe. And then he shows his little amulets in his wallet saying, these are going to protect me. And that's when I thought, we're really in trouble here. This is a country of a lot of people. The city of Mexico City has 24 million people, many of whom are living day to day on the edge. The healthcare system is great if you're rich and non-existent if you're poor. And I started to get nervous. And then something else happened. I got a urinary tract infection. Don't ask me how a man gets a urinary tract infection, but I did.
Wait, no,
No, this is a lot of information, but it all sort of added up to why I left. And, it hurts. Basically, it hurts when you urinate. And thankfully, I have very good friends in Mexico City. They recommended an excellent doctor at the best hospital in Mexico, and I went. And he saw me in one day. He examined me. I got tested for all sorts of everything in one day. The results came back in 2 days, and he said, we think you have a urinary infection. Here's what you're going to do for it. And I said to him, well, I think I have coronavirus. And he said, well, of course I do. And he said, why? I said, well, I have a fever. I'm weak. I'm breathing okay, but, I feel really out of it. And he said, don't worry. I think you have a urinary tract infection. And, if you read the initial symptoms for coronavirus, they basically read like every other illness, right?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So luckily, I was so weak and feeling so poorly that I basically stayed inside. At the same point, I noticed that my neighborhood, which was a fairly fancy neighborhood called Juarez, was starting to really shut down. People were being mindful of space on the streets. Restaurants were shuttering. I even went to my local pizza joint one day, and they said, we're not giving out menus anymore. Look on the screen. That's the menu. I thought, okay. The next day, I went into the historic center, though, to visit a friend, and it was like Day of the Locusts. The streets were packed, just jammed with people, everything happening outdoors. And all of this stuff, the street life and the food and everything that happens on the street in Mexico that I found so charming and life-affirming when I first got there, started to feel really scary, right? Like people at food carts, making food in very small places, breathing on things, handing people other things, right? I had that moment of, this is not good. This could be really bad. You've got to get out of here. And luckily, American Airlines is still flying and was still flying, and I managed to book a flight out. There were 30 people on the plane. 30 people, many of whom were Mormons, by the way, because there was a murder of Mormons in Mexico recently, and the Mormon Church has pulled all of its missionaries back. Of course, you could tell they're Mormons because they were rather tall and blonde and all wearing black suits with white shirts and ties.
What?
No masks.
Weird.
No masks. No gloves. Okay. No, my plane was mostly Mormons.
Okay.
I arrived. I also managed through a friend to find a place to stay in Tucson, which I thought this would be a good place to stay. It's small. The reports in Arizona are quite infrequent at this moment.
Desert, heat,
certainly less,
good things.
Certainly less than New York or San Francisco, which would be my two options of places to go. And it's been very mindfully sort of social distancing is part of the culture here. And friends offered me a bungalow in their property where I can self-quarantine and be around very conscious people. I'm actually going to include the house rules that they sent around before I came here in the blog of this episode, because if you want to understand social distancing, the details of social distancing, this is a really good little primer. So anyway, I arrived at Phoenix Airport. We were the only plane landing in the entire airport. Not one person said to me, where are you coming from? Do you have a temperature? Not one person. I mean, you walk through, boom, and you're out on the street.
Wow.
I rented a car. I swabbed it down. I drove from Phoenix to Tucson with my gloves on and arrived here. And I'm lucky because everybody here is in their own state of social distancing and self-quarantine. We've all agreed to do it for 2 weeks. And that feels really good. You know, when there's consensus and when everybody's on the same wavelength about this stuff, it's so much easier.
Do you think 2 weeks is enough?
Everybody says social quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah, but I mean, Italy's in week 5. Numbers are still going up.
Yes, but they weren't aware of what they were doing until recently.
Well, but neither were we. Neither was the United States.
Yes, but I feel like if I do have coronavirus, which I'm pretty sure I don't, my sense of smell is still quite acute.
Sure.
If that
okay,
is,
yeah,
if
yeah.
that is relevant.
But that's talking about you. That's talking about you specifically. Yes. You should quarantine yourself specifically for 14 days. Do you think
I'm saying
the general lockdown?
Well, Tucson is amazing. I'll tell you, I got here. I made a rule that if I go out into public, like to go food shopping, which I needed to do, that I would mask and glove. That would be my rule, right? So to protect others if I have something. I went to this food co-op called, I can't remember what it's called now, to buy food. And the sidewalk was marked. This is 6 feet from everybody else. People were maintaining that distance. And I got into the shop, and the aisle, people were so respectful in the aisles. If I was in one aisle looking at granola or whatever, nobody came near me. It was impressive, and it was amazing. They didn't even allow us to bring our own bags into the shop.
Yeah.
That's impressive, you know, and that's why it's comforting to be in a place like this. And I do urge that, you know, everybody pay attention to these things more seriously than our authorities are telling us, certainly in the United States, if you call these people authorities who are running the political show. You know, it's quite discouraging. But the scientists are right, and they're good. And again, I'll share the information about proper social distancing. But anyway, that's my story, and that's why I'm in Tucson for the month. I'm hiding out. I'm avoiding the places I live and the people I love. Because I think it's A, good for them that I stay away, and B, good for me that I stay away from them right now. Mm-hmm. So what I hope to do in the next couple of weeks on the podcast is hear from people in different parts of the world about what people in the cannabis space in particular, about what their experience is like, how their lives are changing. You know, just think about a dispensary. And this is, I've put out some calls to people but haven't heard back. I'm assuming because they're very busy. But the days of you smelling your bud are over. That's not going to happen anymore. No one's going to put a bud near your nostril and say, hey, smell this amazing limonene. Right? Mm. How does that change the sales approach of cannabis flower? It'll definitely change it. I want to talk to people who are running dispensaries about those specifics. You know, I want to know how it's affecting rural workers. I want to know if it's what it feels like to be working in a grow right now, an indoor grow. Does it feel scary? Does it not feel scary? So I put a call out to the listeners of this podcast. If you have stuff you want to share with us, let's talk. You can reach us at bravenewweedcast@gmail.com. That's bravenewweedcast@gmail.com.
Hello, listeners. This is Kyle, the sound engineer for the Brave New Weed podcast. I'm here to bring you a quick disclaimer about the interview you're about to hear. The interview is between Joe and Denver-based cannabis entrepreneur Ricardo Baca, and they made this recording right after Denver's mayor, Michael Hancock, mandated that all Denver liquor stores and recreational cannabis dispensaries close as part of lockdown efforts to fight COVID-19. However, within 2 hours of the announcement, Mayor Hancock reversed this position, and so therefore Denver-based recreational dispensaries are still open. This means that part of Joe and Ricardo's interview is out of date, but we opted to leave it as is. Please enjoy.
So, spoke to two people this week. One in Israel, Avihu Tamir. Avihu runs a company called Cannabo Research, which really produces medical-grade vaporizers and their own extractions. Company is based in Israel, but has had deals percolating all through the world, and in fact was going to be the very first cannabis company listed on the London Stock Exchange. That clearly has changed. The second person who responded is Ricardo Baca. Ricardo's been on the show before. He runs Grasslands PR out of Denver. And Rick, just as I called him, said, I just put this article out about cannabis as essential medicine because Colorado, believe it or not, that very day, as you will hear in the podcast, banned recreational cannabis stores. It shut them down. It left the medical dispensaries open, but basically said, oh, if you're doing recreational cannabis, they lumped it in with alcohol. And they said, we're shutting you down. To me, that is egregious. To me, that is insane. To me, that is so negating the fact that cannabis is medicine for many people, whether they buy it in a medical dispensary or in a recreational dispensary. I found that the state that first legalized cannabis in the United States, the city, I should say, that first did that, has now closed recreational facilities. It is not the same in many states. It's not the same in New York. It's not the same in Florida. It's not the same in California. But there it is in Colorado. So Rick has some very important thoughts about that, some very passionate thoughts, and also, some real concerns about what life is like. So, folks, I'm going to leave you to listen and leave you to share your thoughts with us. First interview is with Ricardo Baca from Denver, Colorado, owner of Grasslands Public Relations. Great, I'm here with Ricardo Baca from Denver, live from Denver on March 23rd. Hi, Rick.
Joe, it's so good to see your face again.
Oh, even if virtually, right? I'll tell you, we're in a time, this whole period is reminding me, I'm struggling between keeping cannabis top of mind and dealing with everything else going on, right? It reminds me, I was on Yahoo News the night Trump was elected, there to talk about cannabis, and the minute I came on, it was announced that he had won Michigan or Wisconsin, one of these places, and that was the end of the election. And then Katie Couric said to me, "Let's talk about cannabis." And I said, "Katie, how can we talk about cannabis when Donald Trump just won the presidency? This is like, let's put things in perspective here." But I don't want to abandon cannabis. Obviously, it's a subject that matters very much to me. So, what's new in Denver, Rick?
Oh, so much. We're connecting right now, just so everybody knows, Monday afternoon, March 23rd, and the city and county of Denver just released a stay-at-home order that includes the shuttering of all liquor stores and recreational dispensaries. Our mayor here, Mayor Michael Hancock, is putting the word out that medical stores can remain open, but as of tomorrow night, recreational dispensaries will be shuttered for the time being.
What's the rationale behind that? Seems counterproductive to me.
I understand the need to limit potential social interactions, social closeness, and I'm sure that's just where he's going for. This is a mayor who does equate cannabis with alcohol clearly. And unfortunately, we're starting to see how the cards are going to fall state by state, city by city, as it comes to declaring cannabis, the American Cannabis Dispensary, as an essential business or non-essential business as we approach this pandemic.
I mean, I'm amazed. Even in my sad state of New York, cannabis is considered an essential business. Not one dispensary has closed. And I believe it's that way in many, many states. Why? Colorado, of all states, the first to legalize, why would they do this?
It crosses a number of boundaries. What we're seeing on the medical side is indeed New York State, Pennsylvania, Now the city and county of Denver, they are declaring these businesses, I think state of Washington. Medical dispensaries are essential, and that's huge for patient access. But the state of California went one state further. And they ultimately declared that recreational businesses are also essential, which is huge because you and I both know, Joe, we know this anecdotally. We also know this because the statistics and the data say so. A majority of the people walking into the adult use cannabis dispensary are there to treat some sort of medical condition. And that means they are patients. They are consuming for their wellness, for their health, for their well-being, and therefore we should be protecting their access through the course of this pandemic, which will go on for months.
It seems that way. I mean, I remember Dennis Perone once said to me before he died, all use is medical. And when he said it, it struck a bell to me. I can tell you my own history of cannabis is like, when I started as a young guy, was definitely to alleviate stress and anxiety. There's no doubt about it, right? And I think many people are like that, even if we don't identify it as a medical condition. This seems unbelievable. Is there opposition in any other corner of the city or the county?
This news just broke in the last hour, and so I'm certainly opposed to this move. And I also happen to have been social distancing way before it was cool because, my God, man, if we're not doing our part, then we are complicit. And so we do need to be absolutely careful. The situation we have in Colorado is unique because when you think back to when we actually voted on Amendment 64 back in 2012, we had a governor and a mayor in Denver, both who opposed recreational legalization.
That's right.
And of course, the times are changing, and thankfully we have a new governor, and Jared Polis is an ally to the industry, and he has been very, very good in these last few weeks, making sure that access is guaranteed. So, for example, Joe, he just released an executive order on Friday night that basically put the word out that he was temporarily legalizing curbside pickup, which meant that actual transaction of cannabis, the consumer buying their medicine, buying their cannabis, could actually happen outside the licensed facility. That was huge.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge.
Us to get our medical cards via telemedicine. And I know that they're doing that in California and New York, but we have not done that. And so temporary regulations are allowing people to have access to their cannabis through this hard time. And of course, things are about to get a lot harder considering the circumstances. But there is this conflict at the state level and the city level. Denver Mayor Michael Hancock has never been the biggest ally to the industry. And this is just the latest sign of, his not fully understanding what access to medicine means.
I mean, I also just have to say, to close liquor stores to people at a time of, people use liquor to help mitigate stress. They use it to, do social things together, even if it's online, even if it's across the street from each other. That seems really sort of puritanical and nonsensical to me.
Yeah, and I get it. This virus lingers on all hard, heavy touch surfaces. Certainly a glass of wine at the end of the day, sometimes multiple, helps you wind down. But the difference needs to be made clear, even though oftentimes we do correlate alcohol to cannabis. Cannabis is a proven medicine, as you know. Yeah. And I know you know that this is a proven fact. As I wrote in a column last week in MG Magazine, this is medicine. This is no longer up for debate. Alcohol is not medicine. It's a great relaxing agent, and we do know that. But, cannabis kills 0 people per year, according to the CDC, and alcohol kills nearly 80,000 Americans a year. So I understand closing liquor stores before I understand shutting off access to adult use cannabis, because you are shutting down access for patients at that point.
Yeah, it seems cruel and inhuman. That's for sure. Tell me, what it's like. So you own Grasslands, PR company. What's it like doing PR in the age of COVID here? I mean, how do you do it?
So much of PR, reputation management, crisis management is really about predicting the future. And right now that's really difficult, given that we've certainly never gone through anything like this in the modern era. That said, reputation management, crisis management, and comms, these are inextricably linked to PR and marketing. And so we have been very, very busy with clients the last 2 weeks. It's been amazing to feel like we are part of these teams more so than we ever have, because
I'm sure
95% of our clients are in the cannabis and hemp industries. And it's been so valuable to step up and be there for them on every front that they could possibly need. So much of this is really just managing their communications to the public, which is the consumers and the patients. Also their communications to their partners, their investors, the media. All of these people, they need help because they are underwater considering all of these regulatory changes happening, as we've discussed, at city and state and multi-state levels. And so it's been very busy, very challenging, very stressful, but also very rewarding. And my team and I definitely hang up our hats at the end of every long day and know that we gave it our all and helped our clients communicate with the people who mean the most to their businesses.
I think that's great. I'm glad to hear it. What's in the way right now of business? Obviously there's supply chain disruption. There's access to capital. There's so many things going on. What could you identify as like really getting in the way, making life even harder for them right now in your world in Denver?
The number one worst thing we're seeing getting in the way of these brands, these cannabis businesses, is certainly these state by state, city by city bans that are coming out. And, this will be a moment that we remember in the cannabis legalization, the cannabis regulatory conversation forever. Because Joe, even 2 weeks ago, could you imagine the state of California coming out and saying that cannabis dispensaries are essential businesses? Because, of course, let's remember, these businesses are still paying 280E taxes, which means they're paying an effective tax rate of more than twice of any other business. These businesses are not eligible for SBA disaster loans, which are going to be so mammothly helpful for every other industry as they make it through this unknown of the pandemic in the coming months. And so if they're not able to reach retail, which would mean they're not able to reach consumers, that's mammoth. But if there's a second issue that we see popping up in terms of the challenges to cannabis businesses right now, Joe, it really is investment dollars. We've seen this market freeze, and that has had a detrimental effect on a lot of these organizations and brands already. And it's really, really challenging because, of course, we're dealing with this crisis of coronavirus right now, but the next crisis around the corner is the recession that this is about to cause. And, what is that situation going to look like with cannabis investment dollars going into that recession? This could potentially last 6, 12, 24 months. And I think we have a lot of work to do ahead of us.
There's no doubt about it. What's life like on the streets of Denver? Is it very quiet, preternaturally quiet? I'm right now in Mexico City in a fairly middle-class, good neighborhood where it's very quiet. But boy, when you go to the less well-off neighborhoods, it's almost like there is no epidemic happening. People are in the street. Yeah, it's really scary. That's why I'm leaving tomorrow. But what's it like on the streets of Denver?
For the most part, it's very quiet. You see people who are extremely aware of the severity of the situation, and they're giving it the respect it deserves. At the same time, you do have some people, oftentimes young people, who are gathering in parks. Whether you're hitting a volleyball around or sitting in too close a proximity, enjoying a picnic, these are situations that we cannot be doing right now, and it's just flat out irresponsible. So for the most part, you are seeing people behaving responsibly and abiding by these guidelines being put out by CDC. Others are not, and hopefully they get the message soon.
What are you doing personally to take care of yourself, other than distancing and the obvious things? By the way, are you using cannabis to help keep anxiety at bay, to keep your own stress levels down, or are you just sort of winging it as it goes?
I am, dude. We were talking about this the other day with my colleagues at the agency. I certainly am using cannabis to help me cope. And it's funny, we did this video series called Destigmatized. It's a docu-series that's on our Instagram page, Grasslands Agency. And I just had one run last week, and these were filmed, last summer. And I talked about how powerful a tool cannabis is for coping and getting through hard times. So I think, number one, I'm using it to ideate creative solutions for my business and the businesses that we work with, the brands. I love getting out of my head and thinking about how we might be able to do things differently. It's really, really rewarding. And I am just so thankful for that mind-opening quality that the plant offers to us. Relieving the stress, absolutely. Joe, I don't know about you. I'd be curious to know. I cannot stop thinking about coronavirus, recession. I wake up thinking about it. I go to bed. It's 24 hours a day, save for the 5 hours that I'm actually sleeping. So when I can actually forget about that for 10 minutes, for 30 minutes, I will take that. And cannabis is a great tool for that.
It's a great tool.
Using it in that capacity.
It's a great tool for that. I call it going down the rabbit scroll. I found myself yesterday sitting in bed, not feeling very good, happy to be self-distancing, but I couldn't put my stupid phone down. I was almost reading every article on the New York Times front page, just out of obsession, sort of like I'm looking for some answer. I've also found that I've upped my meditation practice, and I will recommend this to anybody. There's a great app actually called Waking Up by a very smart guy named Sam Harris. It's free for a month. And if anybody ever wants to begin a meditation practice, I can't imagine a better time than now. It really does help you separate yourself from your thoughts. And it's really important right now to distance ourselves from the endless stream of thoughts that are happening, right? As you said, the uncertainty is unprecedented. And it's what is driving my own, whatever you call it, insanity, or my own obsession with trying to understand, see, learn, know everything, and take care at the same time, right?
Yeah. And you said it, you're on the New York Times app every day, every hour, because you're looking for answers, and there just aren't any answers to be had. And I think there's some sort of solace that we can take in that, Joe, because right now there are no answers, and we just have to embrace the unknown. We have to be ready to pivot and malleable, personally, professionally, on every level. It's painful. It is hard out there, but man, dude, it's just, if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of others.
We really need to take care of others too. It's this whole idea of self-care has now morphed to me to us care. Like, it's even me just staying home, not feeling well, is an act of humanity. And I had that observation the other day. It's like, I don't know what's the matter. I do know now, but whenever you get sick right now, everything sounds like coronavirus. If you have a fever, if you have a headache, if you're tired, if you have a hard time breathing, this is all the symptoms of coronavirus.
So true, man.
Except for the new one of loss of sense of smell. Did you read that today?
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, yes. Make sure when you get off this call, you go and put an onion right under your nose. And if you can't smell that onion, they're saying that is a primary indication of corona infection.
Oh my gosh, man.
I know, can you imagine? But it sort of makes sense in a way, because it's going through the nasal passages, into the throat, into the lungs, and these are the primary zones of attack, right?
Yeah, it's a brutal beast. It is an absolutely brutal beast, man. And of course, our world is cannabis, and that's what we're here to talk about. But it's also so essential to make sure that those around us and your listeners are also social distancing and behaving with the responsibility, because otherwise they're just making it worse, and this will last longer. And
what I wanted to give everybody is just a sense of what it's like on the ground in other places, what it feels like, because we don't know. When we're all blocked into our own little worlds here, it's really hard to know. So, Rick, I want to thank you for your time. I should say to people, we were going to be in Denver doing live podcasting this very week, and I'm happy that we could at least connect by podcasting, not live, but I'm hoping to see you in Denver in the near future, the nearest future possible.
We're going to make it happen, my friend.
Thank you, Rick. Take care.
You too.
I want to thank Rick for joining me, spur of the moment, and really speaking so spontaneously. He's a great guy, obviously, you can tell, and a good thinker. And I'm so happy that he was able to join me on the spur of the moment. The second interview, as mentioned, is with Avihu Tamir. He's the founder and CEO of Cannabis Research out of Tel Aviv. The day we spoke, Tel Aviv had just canceled all public transportation. People are seriously doing self-isolation. The day we spoke, the government was in a bit of a crisis. I believe politics have moved things along since then. You'll have to read the New York Times or whatever you read to catch up with the situation there. Everything is fluid, so everything is changing quickly. But as for him and his business, things are on hold for the foreseeable future. Here you have Avihu Tamir. I'm here with, this is Avihu Tamir live from Tel Aviv. Hi, Avihu.
Hi, Joe.
Today is March 23rd, and some things are going down in Israel that are brand new, are they not, with coronavirus?
Yeah, every moment. So today we were being told by the government that limitation of movement is going to become even stricter. So from tonight, there will be no public transportation, and only necessity will be available. So if you need a supermarket or a pharmacy, that's something that will be open. Other than that, no, you shouldn't walk around, no gathering.
No gathering
similar
at all.
To other places in the world, I think.
Yeah, like China. What about, you have a dog. Are you allowed to walk your dog? I hope you're allowed to walk your dog.
Yeah, that's my card to move out of the house. Yes, I can walk around.
So you live in central Tel Aviv, right? Right in Midtown, don't you?
Yes. And it's something that it's like close to the financial district of Tel Aviv. So it's really that midtown, downtown of Tel Aviv.
I'm in Mexico City today, leaving tomorrow, but I was walking around in the streets in my neighborhood and I could hear birds chirping. I could hear people whispering, which is very strange in a very loud, noisy city. How quiet is it in Tel Aviv?
So on Saturday, it was extremely quiet. On Saturday, me and my wife took the dog for a walk. We were walking and it was a bit feeling of zombie land. It was empty, no cars, no people, and basically the shops. Walking on the main, boulevard in Tel Aviv, and looking around, and all the shops and stores and restaurants are closed. So yeah, that's different.
There's also a bit of a political crisis going on in Israel at the moment, right? Like, we don't know who runs the country at the moment. Is that correct? Do I understand that? I mean, Israeli politics are so complicated. Isn't there a standoff in parliament? Like, who's running the show?
Yeah. We still have a tie. And it's a weird tie that no one can build a coalition. We had 3 elections in a row. We were voting this year 3 times, and we still have no result. And
there may be a 4th time, yeah?
One option is a 4th election. Another option is that we'll have a united coalition where both parties, big parties, go together. Not sure if that will work out. Third option is some kind of... it's something that is called a minority government. I know it makes no sense, but in Israel, maybe will be the solution we have.
Wow, that's so difficult. But it sounds like the country is being very strict in its corona application here, right? So I wanted to understand how this is affecting tell our listeners what your business is, Cannabis Research. Please explain it. And let's talk about how this is affecting you and your employees and your life in general.
So Cannabis is a company that basically focused on medical vaporization. We have a medical device vaporizer. It was approved in Israel as a medical device in 2018. And very soon will be approved as a CE medical device across Europe. And in addition to that, we have formulations that are for specific indications, focusing on insomnia and sleep disorder, a formulation that we tested already in preclinical studies, and something that maybe is a bit more unique to Israel, and that's PTSD.
Not anymore, my friend. Not anymore. That is going to be your number one selling formula, let me tell you.
And we're starting very soon a clinical trial with our vape device. It will be the first clinical trial on a vape pen based on extracts in the world. And we're going to test the bioavailability compared to other delivery methods and later on the efficacy as well.
So I love hearing about future plans at moments like this because everything has stopped, and I'm sure things have stopped for you. Where have things slowed down? I mean, I know your devices, they're made in China. Have you had trouble getting supplies from China, for example?
So surprisingly not. Surprisingly, the Chinese manufacturers and suppliers bounced back very quickly. So right now, they're operating in the same capacity as before. So a bit of a backlog on orders, but other than that, I'm getting calls if we need new orders and when are we going to put in the orders for next month. That's surprising.
Where are your suppliers based in China?
Shenzhen.
Oh, wow.
Shenzhen.
Okay, interesting. And what about on the other side, since you supply to Europe? I'm assuming that everything in Europe right now is just frozen, stuck. Tell me about
it. So that's really more challenging. While you see that demand for cannabis, and you see it across the world, is still very strong, and the change is minor. Some would say even that the demand for cannabis in some areas in the world is spiked since the event. People are ordering cannabis. CBD sales in Europe, UK, and Germany, we see a bit of a slowdown. Some of our distributors said they will put new orders after the Corona crisis. That's really became something new. That's all plans are pushed to after the Corona.
Which is God knows when. We don't know when this is over. And how many employees are at Cannabo currently?
So we are 10 employees in the company. And now maybe we'll do, some of them will be all working from remote, and some will take leave for April.
I understood also from what I read that Israel is closing schools for the rest of the school year. Is this correct?
That's a new announcement that we heard. It's going to be challenging. A lot of the employees have kids, small kids, and with the last 2 weeks of having kids at school, without school, it's already challenging trying to work. And at this point, everyone is working remotely from home. How do you move to work back from the office when there's no schools or kindergartens? That's going to be a big challenge.
That is going to be a big challenge. And I mean, it seems like what happens in Israel eventually happens in other places in the world where people are really paying attention. I remember reading also about them using cell phone tracking device to go and monitor people who have infected or exposed to each other. Have you had any experience with this? Has this changed?
Yeah, so that's a big debate in Israel. It got to court 2 days ago. The idea of Israel is to use the Secret Service to monitor the locations, the geolocations of patients. So if you are crossing your path with someone that is a patient, a corona patient, I will call it, and you will get a text message that is saying, okay, you crossed next to a corona patient. So from this moment, you should be 14 days in a quarantine.
Wow.
Yeah. Obviously, not everyone is happy about this surveillance.
What do you think about that?
I feel that's very impressive technology that the Secret Service in Israel have, but I think maybe it's a bit too much. At this point, the Supreme Court actually said that until there is a new government and parliament, and until the parliament is actually voting on this, they cannot use this technology. And funny enough, what the Ministry of Health did is published or put out this app with the same technology that people can put on their phone for free. And then the phone will tell them if you cross someone with the coronavirus.
Whoa. Wow.
And some are doing this freely.
Wow. I'm just curious, how does the technology know that you or I am infected? How does it, you have to have gone through a test, right?
Yeah. So once you know that you are a corona patient or the Ministry of Health know because you were tested, then they're putting your number in a list of, let's call it patients that has corona virus. And since we know now the locations of all these, and you can monitor the others, so anyone that crosses the same area, I think it was 100 meters, will get a text message.
Wow. That is extraordinary. You know, in certain places, that seems like a great idea, especially in the United States where testing is so lax. So hard to find. What about supplies like masks? What about supplies like, obviously there's enough testing in Israel, correct?
I don't know if enough. It's always, I think there's always a talk that you need to have more supply, more kits for tests. But I think generally it's fine. Masks are okay. I was contacted by our colleagues in China that they asked if we need assistance and they would send us more masks. They were producing quite a lot in the last month. And now when things in China are actually looking more bright, they have quite a lot of masks to ship around the world.
Wow. I think what I'll ask you to do is send us the information to that company and we'll post it when we put this podcast out. That's amazing. No, do they have thousands, millions? How many masks do they have?
I think tens of thousands.
That would help in the United States, certainly. It would certainly help in my sad home state, New York. Tell me, what are you doing to keep sane? How long have you guys been in quarantine?
So until today, it was an easy quarantine. You can walk around. You're not going to work. You're working remotely, but it wasn't strict like it's going to happen from tomorrow. Having said that, it's still challenging. It's already 2 weeks now, and I think only in the last weekend, for me personally, the coin dropped that there's nothing to do. Like you just need to sit and wait for this. In the beginning, you have this first wave of worry and upset. And then you're saying, okay, well, what can I do to solve this issue? What can I do to change the situation? So I got to this point in the last weekend when I understood that this is bigger than us. Then it's not something that individuals will solve. And the only solution we have at this point is sit tight and wait. So basically time is our medicine at this point. And once you understand that, and you understand that until probably after Easter or end of April, nothing is going to be solved. And you basically take this understanding and rest a bit. Understanding we basically have this very early summer vacation at home. and then things look just a bit better,
Yeah, I understand.
So the whole world took a month off and let's wait, let's rest, recover, be with the family.
What about give me a quick précis of the cannabis industry in Israel in general during Corona? Has everything slowed down, or is medical treatment continuing? I would assume it's a good time to be a grower out there among some plants if you're outside, right? I don't know. Tell me.
So, like any other medical program, the cannabis program was defined as a necessity, and that's why everything in the cannabis industry, if it's a grower, if it's producers and pharmacies, all are being operated. Everything is open and working normally. So the cannabis industry in Israel is still operating. Research, for example, our clinical research will be put on a hold because no hospital is going to invest right now in clinical research when you need to deal with real patients. So on the side of the research development, things are slowing down, but the actual supplying to patients, that's still running well.
Amazing. How many patients are in the Israeli program right now?
We are getting closer to 90,000.
That many? Wow, 90,000. Yeah. Incredible. Listen, I want you to take good care. I love seeing you, and I want you to stay in touch with me and let me know how things move and how your quarantine proceeds. I'll certainly let you know how mine goes as time goes on, okay?
Yeah, and stay safe there.
And you too. Thank you for this great update.
Hi, listeners. We are always on the lookout for great things to talk about on the Brave New Weed podcast, and we'd love to hear from you. You can always email us at bravenewweedcast@gmail.com with links to articles, interesting news stories, personal accounts of things that you've done, or leads on books or products that we should know about. You can always contact us at bravenewweedcast@gmail.com. Joe, one of the things that I would like to, bring up and honestly ask you about is with these kind of conversations, those of us who are podcasters and who do this thing, we understand like keeping a conversation going or building a conversation. But in situations like this, you kind of just want to know what's honestly on people's minds and what people are honestly going through. Did you find for yourself that these conversations were different in how they felt versus a regular interview?
Well, I think in the age of COVID, every kind of contact feels different. For me, more precious, right? Because I am so far removed from my everyday reality and have been for a couple of weeks now, months really. The fact that I can get people and look at them on Zoom or look at them on a Hangout is meaningful. And the fact that they're willing to talk and share their experience, I think, speaks to our common humanity right now. Which, I do not think this is a great thing, COVID, but I will say that connection is ever more important, certainly to me and almost everyone I know, and more precious. And the fact that these folks are willing to do this and talk, and that I can bring this to the 10,000 or so people that hear this podcast regularly, and I think it's relevant. I want to be relevant. It's like, how important is cannabis to your life given what's going on, right? And that's a question that everybody can ask themselves and answer for themselves. But I feel that we have this platform, and that it's good, and that it is about honest conversation, and the fact that people can get on and talk to us about every day helps make the world feel less distant and helps somehow tie us together, somehow, even existentially. I'm not quite sure. I don't have the words for it yet. I'm still really digesting what's going on, Matthew.
Yeah.
I'm having a really hard time with time and focus. Like, I can't believe that 2 weeks ago I was sort of blindly living my life, talking about going to the beach for a few days to relax. I just can't believe it. I can't believe that I have no focus.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to now set up a schedule of activity every day that I follow because my working life has been blown apart. Really, it's not the same right now.
Yeah, one of the things that I just keep coming back to in these days is reminding myself genuinely of how lucky I actually am. And I think about that in terms of like right now, you and we're looking at each other over a Hangout call. I own this microphone that I'm speaking into. I own the webcam that allows you to see my face, and I can afford the internet that allows me to connect to you. And, that puts us in a really pretty small sliver of the populace in a lot of the ways.
Of the world.
And what do we do? How do we consider that? How do we go through this and not become the woe is me type about how our lives have changed, but recognize how special it is that like we can even do this and continue to have these conversations with one another and not be isolated in our own isolation.
So we give thanks for that, and we swab down the mics when we're done. That's what we do.
All right.
I'm so happy to see you. I'm glad you're well. Stay distant. Play by the rules, man. This is not the time to be a maverick.
Yeah, just take care of yourself and take care of those that you love and everyone around you.
I'm lucky. I told you, I'm in a smart, conscious community of people who are 6 feet apart all the time.
Well, you and everyone else out there too.
Thanks for listening, folks. Tune in again. We'll be with you.
Thanks for listening to the Brave New Weed podcast. This episode and all future episodes are made possible by amazing listeners like yourself. If you like what you've heard, we encourage you to show your support by giving $1 a month for special access and rewards on patreon.com/bravenewweed. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @BraveNewWeed. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/bravenewweed. And remember, you can always find more information about us or information discussed in each episode by pointing your favorite browser to bravenewweed.com.